Molds are 3D printed, 3MF gets certified by ISO, and all the problems with teleport coming up in this episode of the Slant 3D podcast, the show about 3D printing and our place inside the industry. But before that, let's go ahead and pay the bills. This episode is brought to you by Teleport. Teleport is your print-on-demand application that allows you to start a 3D printing business without owning a 3D printer. All you have to do is upload a 3D model, connect it into your store, whether it's Etsy, Shopify, Amazon, and whenever you get an order, we will print that item and ship it straight to your customer for you. So go ahead and check out Teleport today at slantpod.com. That's slantpod.com. Alrighty. So first piece of news. There is a lot of news today, guys. Like the summary wasn't even part of it. Desktop Metal. Desktop Metal went out of business last week, officially went into bankruptcy. According to the news, Desktop Metal had been officially acquired by Nano Dimension, but was still technically a separate entity. So they just bankrupted the whole thing rather than absorbing it into themselves. I don't really understand how that works. I suppose the shareholders of the company, like Nano Dimension, has to pay for it, but doesn't retain it or keep it around and keep on losing money from it. That nuance is kind of lost on me of how that goes through, because it's technically a part of Nano Dimension, even though it's a separate entity, which means Nano Dimension was the primary shareholder, which means Nano Dimension has to pay for it, but doesn't get their money back out of it. So they go into bankruptcy, they shell off the assets. Maybe that number one shareholder is the first money out from whatever liquidation happens, but I doubt it. Plus, they spent $100 million on Desktop Metal, I believe. So, and I don't think Desktop Metal has that many assets unless you include the patent portfolio. But if they did pay $100 million for it, Desktop Metal's legal firm is suing for $90 million because of unpaid legal fees. So basically, Nano Dimension has gone through a whole bunch of management reshuffling and stuff over the last year. Lot of drama. Soda drama over there. But they're coming out of it. Desktop Metal is kind of an interesting case because Desktop Metal was the poster child of production 3D printing for a long time. Problem was they never really productioned any 3D prints. They were always very heavy on hype, and the technical challenges with it were always fairly clear. I think I've been very open about that throughout history forever. I never thought of Desktop Metal as a fraud or insincere in what they were trying to do. Rick Fulop was one of the co-founders of Protolabs, and Protolabs does fine and is a perfectly reasonable organization. So it's not like some founder-led blowhard. Rick is most definitely a salesperson, and that's fine because you need that in a CEO sort of position. But it is probably a case of like the technology did not catch up as fast as to the vision as was intended, and market acceptance. Market acceptance was lower than what they probably anticipated when they had this. They had partnerships with Coke, they were producing it all, but they're just technical disconnects between what could be delivered. Now everybody's like, oh, 3D printing is overhyped and now we're in the bottom of the hype cycle and blah, blah, blah. We've been in the bottom of the hype cycle for the last 10 years. And then people don't give Bambu any sort of credit. I would say consumer 3D printing is coming out of the trough of disillusionment into standard production. I think it's pretty much will likely stabilize from here on out. But production 3D printing, manufacturing with 3D printing, I don't think it's even at the start of the hype cycle for how far it'll go, because there's been attempts at it before, but when Slant 3D started, I always considered us early to production 3D printing. And everybody else is just now starting to think, oh, wow, you can build big print farms and make a whole bunch of parts. That's not a very common thought, which is indicative of why a Desktop Metal kind of went out, because they were going after that. They likely had technical challenges, but also consumer acceptance challenges. They couldn't sell enough machines to stay ahead of how expensive it was to build them and run the organization. Okay, Mantle unlocks ultra-fine mold features with top definition update and rising industry adoption. A US-based developer of automated tool-making systems, it has launched its latest software update, Top Definition, enabling the direct 3D printing of mold features as thin as 0.2 millimeters. The update, released over the air to all customers on July 29th, marks an 80% reduction in minimum feature size and comes as the company reports a twofold increase in bookings compared to mid-2024. The announcement coincides with growing demand for domestic tooling solutions as manufacturers aim to reduce lead times and respond to skilled labor shortages. Mantle's system, which combines metal 3D printing with precision machining, is designed to streamline injection mold tooling production by replacing complex operations such as sinker EDM. 3D printing molds. The way Mantle does it is they basically just run down powder, print it all up, but then they hit it with a CNC tool in order to give it defined outer edges. And what this allows you to do is still create impossible geometry, but you refine each layer with machining so the machine doesn't have to reach into a hole. So you can make molding geometries that generally were not very machinable before and really fine features, such as in this case. This also, since this process is kind of universal, I'm going to bet that it's easier to prepare for than some other machining techniques. Because when you're designing a mold, you're designing for the molding, but you're also designing for the machinability of the mold. This one, you just have to design for the molding, which means you got to have draft angles and that kind of stuff, but you don't have to worry about can it be made. So this lets you skip over the skilled labor gap of how do you machine a mold, which is why Mantle should run far. Like, it's a good idea. Metal 3D printing of molds is a good idea. Plastic 3D printing of molds is stupid. If you are creating a plastic consumable mold or something like that, go just print the part. Ultimately, I do believe that printed parts will replace molds because it's a waste step in a production process, but people will argue with me, and that's fine. We're allowed to have different opinions. But what Mantle is doing is really, really good in a lot of different ways because they get really good detail and it simplifies the mold making process quite a bit. And it's a really good implementation of it because they're not inventing, they didn't have to invent fusion. They're using kind of existing technologies and creating a process that's really valuable. And that is wildly underrated most of the time by people. Just the implementation of stuff. Okay, next piece of news. Beehive Industries unveils Rampart, a 3D printed engine for uncrewed combat aircraft. This is per 3D printing industry. System manufacturer Beehive Industries has unveiled the Rampart engine, a fully 3D printed propulsion system developed for use within the collaborative combat aircraft framework. Nicknamed the Force Multiplier, the engine is specifically designed for uncrewed UAVs. Rampart's role is to expand the operation. Rampart is manufactured using additive techniques, eliminating the need for traditional processes such as casting, tooling, and sourcing of long lead time components, and enable faster response to shifting operational demands. Yeah, they're 3D printed a jet engine. They 3D printed a jet engine. This is good. Yeah, great. There need to be more 3D printed jet engines. Jet engines can really benefit from the geometry freedom of 3D printing. And there have been a lot of 3D printed jet parts. Nobody's kind of gone full stack with it very often. So it's just great to see kind of in general and wanted to highlight this success. But aerospace has been very forward on 3D printing since like 2012. Like they've been using it for a long time because it's just an obvious win for lightweighting, efficiency, cooling, geometry control, all the stuff. And aerospace is very often a leader in certain technologies just because they have to work at the bleeding edge. If you're building a fighter aircraft, budget doesn't matter, and you got to be the best one out there. It's a pretty good way to create something that's way ahead of everybody else because all the rest of us have to deal with budget of some sort. Okay, Protolabs coming up on the next one. Protolabs financials. Protolabs hits record revenue, but 3D printing softens. This is per 3dprints.com. Had a strong second quarter, setting a new revenue record and showing steady growth across its services. 3D printing may have taken a slight hit this quarter, but it remains central to Protolabs' hybrid manufacturing strategy. The Minnesota-based digital manufacturer reported Q2 2025 revenue of $135 million, a 7.5% increase over the same period last year. This figure includes $105.8 million fulfilled through Protolabs digital factories and $29.3 million from its Protolabs network of vetted third-party suppliers. So Protolabs makes the bulk of the parts internally themselves through their own molding, 3D printers, so on and so forth, but they have qualified third-party manufacturers that also work with them. Network revenue grew nearly 19% year over year, continuing to outpace the factory business in relative terms. I don't believe they split out 3D printing in their financials. They finished the quarter with $123 million in cash, no debt, and $10.6 million in cash flow. It spent $1.5 million on capital projects and bought back $3.1 million in shares, down from $20.9 million last quarter. Protolabs is in good shape. I think they have, I don't know if they're burning. Margins are still a challenge. Adjusted gross margins slipped to 44.8% from last year, and the network side still carries lower margins than factory work. Yeah, sure. I need to look up the financials myself to look at it more closely. 3D printing dropped slightly to $21.2 million, down 1% from last year. That's to be anticipated. 3D printing in general is an expensive process. People haven't been using it. R&D is down still. So yeah, to be flat, Protolabs is flat plus growing, like 7% growth year over year for a publicly traded company. Really good. I feel like there's some like little financial gotcha inside of Protolabs that I don't recall, but that's not for real because I don't see it right now. Looks really good based on this summary. They're not. Doesn't appear that they're losing money. Okay, we're only halfway through news, guys. Like there is all kinds of stuff coming here. So, next piece of news: 3D printing's pellet revolution. Why hobbyists are being left behind. This was an article by All3DP talking about pellet 3D printers. Why aren't they at the consumer level? There's some $5,000 machine ones out there that print with pellets. This came up because it's a question that comes to me very often. Pellet machines are overly complicated with less control. They work fine for large format where you're just moving a bunch of material. But the reason for that is because the pellets are small relative to the amount of material being deposited. And it's basically the pellets appear to be high resolution compared to how big the part is. The reason you don't want to use pellets on desktop machines is, again, the extruder, stupid complicated. If you want to feed in one pellet at a time and make sure that it liquefies and moves all the way out to the nozzle, and then you have to be able to retract somehow, which is kind of tough because the pellets aren't all connected to each other, so you can't pull back and create not negative pressure, but the pull back on it or pull it out of the nozzle that you can with a typical retraction. You can stop the flow and move really fast, so pellets could work a little bit better. But again, the extruder is really complicated, so it makes the machine really expensive, so it doesn't work for consumer applications, even though the filament is less expensive. And let's face it, a bag of pellets for 3D printer filament would probably cost about $10, which is about 10x whatever the cost of raw pellets would be. That all being said, the other issue with it is the complexity of the machine, but it's pointless and irrelevant. The cost to convert pellets into filament is very low. The reason filament is expensive generically is because it's really expensive to store and ship and move around. And pellets weigh just as much as filament. They can pack a little bit tighter, and they're easier to process than with filament, because filament you got to spool and then you got to pack and so on and so forth. But the additional steps in the process of converting pellets into filament, which is a higher precision raw material, is trivial. So pellets are a nifty idea to get cheaper, but they will ultimately never be the primary way because you just lose so much control. Also, by the way, in like a factory, pellets are messy. You can't transfer them around. They're not very controllable. They're not very packageable. Like there's just logistical problems with pellets. So yeah, that's the thing about pellets. Okay, next piece of news. Hold on. University of Maine engineers. Wait. Oh, the title's kind of gone. Scientists okay, yes. Thanks to new research from the University of Maine, the strength of gyroid infills can now be accurately calculated with a reliable mathematical formula. Engineers now have a predictive tool rather than relying on extensive physical prototyping. I reviewed this research paper, which, by the way, is very well written and very well set up. But they tried to create a finite element analysis of gyroid infill for FDM parts, so that based on testing data. So they printed off a whole bunch of parts, they tested them, and then they did a line fit to that in order to create a finite element model of gyroid infill. Here's the problem. They tested it on a desktop FDM machine. That's great. Your machine is different. My machine is different. That machine is different. That room is different. The problem with certification of infill is that you can only certify it for a particular machine in particular conditions. This is why like SLS machines and Stratasys machines cost so much, because they're in a chamber, they're controlled, the temperature's all the same. Everything is the same, so there are no variables. Your desktop machine, enclosure or no, is very inconsistent between one desktop machine and another. So you cannot create engineering testing standards from that because it'll vary from machine to machine. So even though they certified gyroid infill, it doesn't look like they universally certified it because it's based off their testing data. It's possible I missed something inside of the paper. I skimmed it. But that's generally the problem with it, is certifying it for a particular machine. You basically have to go through each machine, which is what each machine manufacturer does. They certify parts from their machine in this way. But this is also why FDM has been so slow to gain like kind of mass market adoption. And like, why don't you make car parts out of it? Because you can't certify it. You can't test it and know that that part is made the same unless it's coming from a certain system. Side note, this is why at Slant 3D, we only use a primary machine in the whole factory so that we know that every part is the same because it's coming out of the same system. If you have one machine, you have no idea what the parts are. So that works fine for like some consumer products applications, but you can't do it for production or parts with specifications attached to them of like what they need to do. Okay. Bambu Labs' new crowdfunding platform launched on MakerWorld. This new Kickstarter-like platform at Bambu Labs MakerWorld is a crowdfunding feature aimed at helping creators turn printing projects into reality with a little financial help from fellow makers. We've seen so many incredible ideas that we never get built because they're too big or too complex and require resources that individual creators don't have, Bambu Labs says in its blog. I'm not going to read their blog. Bambu Lab turned loose crowdfunding for 3D print projects. You can basically raise a couple $100 in order to build some 3D printing project. This is Bambu Lab's continued attempt to try to increase people's use of 3D printers. They can sell a printer to everybody. But the problem is that the fall off of use of a personal 3D printer is really steep. If you're not an avid hobbyist, you don't keep on using it. So they are trying to figure out how do we get people to keep on coming back to the machine, so that it becomes useful and active in their day to day. And part of that is content creation, more models to print that are more specific to you and projects to chase down. So Bambu can't make all the models, so they're incentivizing people to make their own models by crowdfunding more models, which will have more people use their machines. Good for them. That's fine. But yeah, and the crowdfunding, that's totally reasonable, and makers are cheap. So yes, raising up a couple $100 to fund a 3D printing project is a good idea. And I hope it does well, and I hope they'll do fine. And that's all the editorialization I've got about that, I guess. Pretty cut and dried on that one. Okay, next piece of news. 3MF additive manufacturing format officially recognized as an ISO standard. The 3MF consortium has announced 3MF additive is become is recognized as an ISO standard, hailed as the lingua franca of 3D printing. When it was introduced in 2015, 3MF is an open source vendor neutral XML based data format designed specifically for 3D printing, ensuring AM models are translated accurately from concept to part with information such as materials, colors, textures, and supports, all in a single file. The consortium acknowledged that a decade of work by the consortium steering committee who have helped refine, validate, and future-proof the format to get it to this point. Cool. Yeah, 3MF is fine. The reason 3MF exists is because prior to that, we had SDL and OBJ. OBJ has paint-on textures, which aren't very useful inside of 3D printing. It has a materials file that comes along with it. So OBJ was designed for gaming models. STL was the original 3D printing model. It was the original 3D model, which is just a very dense and not very efficient sort of 3D model file, but it is simple and reliable and consistent. Step is a CAD file for moving in between. 3MF, specifically designed for 3D printing so that you can basically retain things like paint-on supports and texture locations and that kind of thing. So 3MF is a good format in that way. We're working on adding some of this stuff into like teleport to where you can paint on supports for your models yourself and then just say, I'm using my own supports, and then we use your 3MF file to define where those supports are. That will be coming at some point in the future. But for now, we use STL because STL is just kind of universally used and recognized. 3MF is still, since it was only released in 2015, it's not as heavily recognized within the broader world as like STL. And if you look at like the repos, the vast majority of files on there are STLs because that's what's been around longer. And 3MF was introduced in 2015, basically gained sort of popularity in 2018-19, and now continues to be used. But an ISO standard, that's cool. It means it's a file that people actually use within an industry standard. Okay. All right, that's all the news. We got through all the news, guys. This is one of the longest news sections we've ever had. Okay, company updates. Tangled. Everything breaks. It's a note that I put on this. Last week, a bunch of stuff was breaking on Tangled, and we were also introducing some new machinery and that kind of stuff, and none of it worked. Like one machine we got, it was the wrong voltage, so we had to get a new transformer. We also had to rewire it, so it actually had ground wires. Fun times, all the silliness. So we don't electrocute people, but nonsense. Then a VFD burned out on one machine, and then the heater burned out on the main extruder, and we have a video coming out on that. So I don't really want to spoil that right here, because how we fixed that was not to replace the heating element, because it takes a couple weeks to show up from the manufacturer in order to get a replacement. We hope it's a replacement. If not, we have to keep on using this somewhat jury-rigged solution that we have. That all being said, we thought Tangled was going to start to get behind. It's not. We're good. We're making machines running right now. Tangled filament will keep on going out the door. Go crazy. Order what you want. On the plus side of Tangled, we will probably, I feel like I've teased this a bunch of times, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be releasing PETG over on Tangled for Tangled members. It'll probably be, I don't know what it's going to cost, guys. I think it'll probably be about $15 per kilogram, maybe less. I'm not sure. We're mathing some of that stuff right now. It will not be PETG made by us. We are doing it in partnership for the short time here because, we don't have the capacity to do more PETG. Okay. But, Tangled's rolling along. Yeah, go ahead. Go get Tangled. Stuff should be shipping out basically in about 1 to 2 days right now. A few will go a little bit longer because of the snafu, but we should be rolling again. We should be able to do like a new line tour because like the Tangled line has been upgraded in a couple different ways. I've talked about like our giant spooler and that kind of stuff, but we have another. Oh, this is fun. We are working on automated 1 kg spooling. It's dependent on a supplier, but we expect that this week we'll get numbers back on like what it'll take to integrate that thing. I think they'll work fine. which means that presumably about 2 to 4 weeks after that, we can start spooling 1 kg spools that will be Bambu compatible. Currently, Teleport 1 kg or Tangled 1 kg spools are not Bambu compatible. We'll have a Bambu compatible spool. Yeah. So we're working on that. We'll see if it falls through. It can still fall through, but we're working on that. That's updates for Tangled. I don't think there's anything else with that. Do enjoy the Tangled video over there. It'll be fun. Teleport. Updates for Teleport. So what has been done to Teleport here this week? Okay, right now we are definitely we're finalizing testing and unit testing of a new backend for mainly ShipStation users on Teleport. And then that will finish the very last kind of cherry on top for Teleport v2. That is going to be deployed next Tuesday as in August. Oh, give me a calendar. As in August, not 8th, August 12th. So August 12th will be that when that deployment goes through. Teleport will be taken down for about 2 hours as we do that deployment, paint the walls, do what we need to do inside of there, and then we'll bring it back up. This has been in percolation for a lot longer than most stuff that we release. We generally kind of just ship when it's ready, and then we clean it up as we go along. We're not doing that with this one. That all being said, there'll likely be a couple of bugs the 1 or 2 days after this release, because there always is. There's never a system that launches perfectly. There's always some little weirdness. So if you see some little weirdness late on the 12th or on the 13th, please let us know right away so that we can make sure that there's nothing hurting your orders or anything like that. But it should be pretty much invisible, even though it's a pretty big update. We're doing a ton of testing with that whole thing before it goes out to make sure we don't break stuff. But that will finish up deployment of Teleport v2. Features that have been released in a little while. There's a chat bubble next to each one of your line items inside of order history. If you hit that chat bubble, it will autofill the order number and all the info that we need to track down the order to help you with it. So you have an order inside of order history. Don't just go down to the chat over on the left, hit the little chat bubble right next to the order, and that will save you a bunch of typing and a bunch of back and forth of like, what order is it? I've got a problem with my order. What order number is it? Here's the order number. Just hit that order number. We'll all go in and it'll say, hey, I have a problem with this order. And then you can add more details in alongside of it. And that helps us a bunch. It helps you a bunch. It'll just make everybody's experience better. So it's better customer support on that. We updated slicing a little bit. Two things with slicing. We're tuning down the initial bed layer a little bit because there was a little bit of feedback that came back last week around first layer. And first, by the way, the rule and the recommendation is don't have any first layer customer facing. Just don't do that because the first layers across thousands of parts are just intermittent and inconsistent, regardless of what the machine is. There will be rotation of the earth or a level a little bit off, or the flow rate will be different, or even if all the levels are the same, if you have two lines next to each other and they're extruding into each other, you can push one sideways and then you start to get like this waving artifacting through it. And the only way to prevent that is to have the lines kind of spaced out, which means that now you can potentially have lines showing on the print. So that's the reason you don't want to have customer-facing surfaces be the bed finish, because the bed just has inconsistency from the flow of the nozzle. It's part of life. That all being said, we're tuning that a little bit to loosen it up because we may have had a slight over-extrusion on first layer, so we're just bringing that back a hair. And there has been a small bug inside the system where a few files and users have been slicing with an incorrect older profile, which isn't as refined and polished. So that's been updated. So that should be tighter right now too. It was a few extraneous orders and that kind of thing, but it was present to where they just weren't as premium as we'd like them to be. So those two updates to Slicer, Teleport itself, a lot of the stuff is internal. Customer facing side on the Teleport UI, we've been messing with the seller dashboard a little bit. International currencies. We're cleaning that up a little bit. So there's been an addition of translation of those currencies so that everything inside of your Teleport dashboard should be in USD. Everything will present as USD. We're going to expand that so that it should be able to eventually present in your local currency. But for right now, everything is in USD. So that should clear up a little bit of confusion with that with a couple of our international users. A lot more international users coming on. Okay. Teleport. We did have a problem where we shipped an order too fast last week. Person made the order and 2 hours later it shipped because it came through just right and it was a fast print and everything else. So, shoot, where'd my test print go? I'll get that back. But we shipped it too fast. And she reached out to us and asked us, we got to cancel this. I didn't mean to make that order. I was like, well, it was all auto-matched and it was shipped. But yes, you can go ahead and hit the cancel button over there if you think we shipped it too fast. So I don't know if that's a bug that we should address and just put a delay on parts. I don't think we're going to. But know that when your order comes through, if it's matched up and teleport is turned on, we're going to start printing and shipping the order. Doggone it. I want my test part for that. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Other update. I slightly misshowed something last week. I showed the updated boxes going out. These are going out almost universally right now. It's fully deployed. But I said that the paper looked like this. I showed this. That's not what it is. This is the correct paper. Sorry about that. I got messed up in the dark room. But yes, so this is for small parts and that kind of stuff. This is the standard paper that you see. So we're moving towards this nested kind of crinkle paper stuff. For small parts, about yay big or smaller, they will go into white boxes with an exterior label and that kind of stuff. With the part inside of there, nestled in there, perfectly protected. So more delicate parts are a lot more protected by this, and it just looks really good. Doesn't that look nice? And those boxes we like a lot more than brown boxes. If you, for large parts that require it will go into an 8x8 or that size type of a box. So if you filled out the build volume or you have a lot of parts in it, those will still go into a brown box, but they will still have the blue paper on the inside. So there's that update on that. Let's see here. We may prune teleport. I'm pretty sure orange filament is going to get killed. So if you were super dependent on it, which I know nobody is, orange filament will be going away probably in teleport. We're going to tighten some of that stuff up. We're also going to get rid of a few third-party components. Anybody who's currently using it, we will, of course, notify you. And this is a notification as well. So if you had a big old plan for orange filament and probably the M2 screws or something like that, those are probably going to go away, with replacements coming in behind. New better stuff. Update on first layer, talked about that. End of design notes. Okay, so teleport, we have a policy that if a part comes through that is unprintable or has some defect on it or something like that, that's like the design of the part, we'll say like we will include a design note ticket with the box so that you can see the part and you can see the design note right there at the same time. It's much better than like email because you can't, if we send you an email saying, hey, this part had this, that, and the other thing, you're like, what is it? Can you send me pictures? So on and so forth. And that's not helpful. So we just send the design note with the part. The issue is that people upload files that are not very printable and have them go straight to customers. And then the design note is included with the customer box. And it gets back to the designer, fortunately, but they're like, why did the designer get a design feedback? And I appreciate that. That is true. So what we are doing is we're just going to kill design notes because they haven't been as useful as we had hoped that they would be. It was an opportunity for you to get engineering feedback on design notes. We're just going to kill them. They are being replaced. And this is a feature inside of Teleport as well. In your files page, we will send design notes directly to the file inside of Teleport, and it will highlight as yellow and have a little kind of chat box notification next to the file there. Right now, it's kind of silent. We're working on a notifications feature inside of Teleport that will show, hey, you got design feedback on this file or whatever it happens to be. That will come, but all of that is part of a roadmap that's a few weeks out or so. So right now, if you're worried about your part or you want to get feedback on it, or you got a bad part in the mail and you're like, I can't believe they printed this, go check your design notes because it's very possible that we saw that and we just want to get the feedback to you. It does help us a little bit in production too, because there's not that physical step of like the design note needs to be included with it. So it is an improvement. But a lot of people like the design notes for getting feedback from people, and some people don't like the design notes because the design notes go to a customer because they haven't qualified the print with Teleport yet. By the way, guys, with Teleport in general, I highly recommend getting a prototype of your part. The reason being is that our machine is different from your machine. That's like the simplest version of it all. Everyone will have their home machine, a Prusa, a Bambu, a Creality, whatever it happens to be. And every one of those machines makes a different part. Every one of those machines makes a different part. And subtly, in all kinds of different ways, from the slicer that you use to the filament that you use. Shrink will be different. Compensation will be different. The tops of holes will be different, for better or worse. Sometimes there are slicers out there that optimize for print quality, but they screw up your tolerances. So there's these trade-offs that come in. So it is important that while you are developing a design, you develop for the machinery that it's going to be made on. So I would say get the prototype out on your home machine and then expect going through like 1 or 2 tries on Teleport to make sure it's fully optimized for Teleport. Obviously, we have design notes over on Slant Pod and all the videos on this channel and that kind of thing, talking about how good design. And we're working on trying to condense and focus those a little bit more, and kind of put together like a 10 commandments for Teleport. But product design is not a 10 commandments thing. Good product design isn't. So that'll always be a thing. But make sure that you're realizing that Teleport is a different machine and therefore will have a slightly different output from your machine. That's just a thing to plan out because that's universal for everything. One CNC machine does a little bit different from another CNC machine, or it's different climate, or the metal warped different, all these things. There's so many factors in production that if you introduce a new variable of an entirely new machine and a different slicer, it's different. It's our job to keep on making it more similar, because for us, from like a customer service standpoint, we want to have you say, I use a Bambu machine, and we're like, okay, we need to use all Bambu settings for this person, send that through, so that it looks the same. That's just part of building. And while we continue to improve and iterate in that direction, we can't cover every machine yet. Emulate every single machine yet in all of its weirdnesses. And then people will change print settings, and then it's different again. 3MF helps with that a little bit, but not entirely. Okay, let's see here. Anything else with Teleport? I don't know. Design notes and those machines and that kind of stuff is really indicative of like the difficulty of the challenge with Teleport. Because when you're making a manufacturing system like this, there are infinite ways things can go wrong. Wrong machine, wrong material, wrong color, shipping breaks, rotation of the earth. Of course, there's a million individual tool moves that all have to go correct in order to have the part be made right. And then you have to have collection and make sure people don't have that. And reducing the probability of things going wrong when there's so much stuff to go wrong is just a very hard and long problem. And we're best positioned to do it because we've done mass production for so long. Like, we know how to certify parts. We know how varied parts can be. But at the same time, people can upload anything. And one guy will upload like an aerospace part, which still goes in the same settings of Teleport, and another person will upload a cookie cutter. And the person with the cookie cutter will be like, why is there a seam on the side of the cookie cutter? And the guy with the aerospace part will be like, why can't I know where the seam is? It's going to show up someplace and change the dynamics of the part. Now, that is our fault. That's our problem to deal with. But that's the problem. Like, the fact that people can upload anything and then there's so much that has to go right in order to make it well. Also, like, the realization that, like, people will go through 3 or 4 iterations of a part on their machine, and then they'll upload it to Teleport, which is the first try and first time we've ever seen it. And we have to make it perfect on the first try, equivalent to their iterated design, even though it's not designed to the machine. This is one of the problems that we got to do. How do we be so much better than everybody else to where iteration isn't necessary, to where you can just upload and know it's there? It's really, really hard because technically the correct solution is not like universal print profile or anything like that. We have a set print profile right now, which people all promptly ignore and move on with life there. But again, that's our thing. But that's the challenge of a 3D printing service. So there's context about like where this is going and what we're going to do to address this. We're going, like I said before, like we're getting rid of orange and that kind of stuff. Teleport is going to become more focused, and we're going to keep on harping on like the uses that it's good for. So like right now, Teleport is amazing at making nightlights, great at making cookie cutters, great for functional parts, great for terrain and that kind of stuff. Home goods that are well designed and chunky, like the universal things. Like if you're making a chunky, fat 3D printed part, so on and so forth, that's all great. If you're making itty bitty tiny parts, don't want to do that. If you want to fill up a box with 200 tiny little parts, probably shouldn't do that. Those types of things. The thing, they're really bad. You can't do vase mode stuff. Some versions of lamps are not the greatest. But we'll continue to add in those, and we chase out the long tail. We were doing test prints the other day that were like this big and had little fine things on them there just for verifying it. But so we keep on casting more light into the dark corners, but Teleport has a long way to go. That all being said, we're going to focus Teleports towards like kind of specific applications because it makes it more maintainable for us. Like, oh, here's how you use Teleport for making night lights and that kind of thing. And then we can fully support and build out all of the flow for night lights and then go kind of category by category. And that's the right way of doing it. We released Teleport as open-ended. I knew it was going to be a monster when that happened, but doing the focused version of it is actually a tougher technical challenge because there's more that like the developers need to know about, and software developers don't always understand 3D printing. But like all of this is just the evolution of the team, the organization, the product, that kind of stuff. So it's normal. So long as we're not getting worse, and we're not getting worse, everything gets better by leaps and bounds every week, to where we keep on making thousands more parts and getting better at stuff, and the team gets better, and so on and so forth. So all of that. One last update to Teleport. I did tease this last week. We have a new feature to Teleport, almost a new product within Teleport. We're building it right now. It's a big deal. You guys are going to love us so much. I have no doubt, because we are building something that addresses so many problems with creating a 3D printing business. But yes, the new feature for Teleport, you guys will all like a lot, because it will, number one, make Teleport just so much easier, but will just ultimately help everybody so much. So I'm really, really jazzed about it. And we're really going to be really excited to release it. It should be coming out probably about 2 weeks from here. We'll release it kind of in beta to a few folks, and then we'll release it more broadly. What's kind of funny, it is a really amazing product, but I'm sure there's one thing about it that everybody's going to wildly dislike. Not everybody, a few people are going to wildly dislike, but it will still be stupidly valuable to folks. But it will be a great addition to Teleport. If you're an existing Teleport user, you'll get access to it. It's not going to be behind a paid tier or anything like that. It will be free and open and available. If you're a new user to Teleport, this new feature will be really great for you. If you're completely new and fresh, and if you're old as salt or something like that, it'll be really nifty too. But the enablement that comes from this, how much more power you're going to have in your hands as a designer, as a business operator, it's going to be really cool. You guys are going to, pretty sure everybody's going to really, really like it. But anyhow, so that's Teleport. All right, now, discussion topic. See my old friend? Discussion topic: why timelines matter and why they can always be hit. This is going to end up in a discussion between management and labor, I guess. Timelines. Oh, shoot. Such these easy topics. Like, it sounds like a simple thing, but it's really not. Okay. So, timelines can always be hit. That's a baseline truth. Many people have interacted with timelines and timeframes that they believe to be unreasonable. Oh, the boss said 2 weeks and we're going to need at least 4 to get it done. That kind of a thing, right? And most of the time, project planning and timelines are garbage and poorly done. But there is a way of doing them correctly. When starting up a project, you have to very early on establish these are the 3 main things that mean that this project has succeeded. If you're building a building, building a software, building a product, whatever it has, you're like, it has to do this, it has to do this, it has to do this. Roof's got to be on, building has to exist, people have to be moved in by this date. That is a baseline timeline. Once you have those goals, then you start working backwards from those goals, which is like, okay, in order to get that building up, we're going to need to get permits. The city's going to need 4 weeks. And then materials getting in is going to have to be this, that, and the other thing. We can do both of those at the same time. And materials will show up the day that the permits show up. And then you assume something will go wrong. When I was in engineering school, what my professors would always tell me is you estimate the amount of time it takes and then you add 30%. There are other similar rules around in the world that are equally fine, but they're rules of thumb and they're not very analytical. It's that's a very bureaucratic way of going about it. We work in this slow organization. Every project's always 30% late. So just plan for that. But what you end up with is everybody starts thinking, oh, it's going to be 30% late, so I'm going to add 30%. And then it gets passed on to the next guy, and he's like, I'm going to add 30%. And then the next guy goes by and he says, I'm going to add 30%. So you end up adding 200% to the overall timeline. This is why bureaucracies in large companies are so slow compared to like startups. Because no one is actually planning or analyzing the timeline or establishing clear goals that can then be hit. The reason I know a timeline can always be hit is because I have to make payroll every month. This is always kind of funny to me. When somebody on my team comes to me, it's like, we can't possibly hit that timeline. And I'm like, we don't have any money and I'm going to figure out how to pay you in the next 2 weeks. And that's just the gig because that's the timeline. So it's always funny to me when people are like, the timeline's unreasonable. And I'm like, you want to know unreasonable? Imagine having no money in the bank the week before I'm supposed to pay all you guys. Or something along those lines. That's what it's like at a bootstrap startup. But you find a way. I'm going to get a loan. I'm going to call an uncle. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to find a sale, call a client. I'm going to make 200 calls tomorrow. Now, admittedly, for the entrepreneur, that is a different kind of stress because you signed up for that sort of situation, and team members don't always sign up for that kind of stress. However, the reason timelines are so important to maintain is because if none of them exist, if there is no timeline, we're going to start this project, and when it's done, it's done. It will always take longer because people will tweak and perfect and not be in a hurry at all. I can't remember the name of the rule, but it's basically any project expands to fill the time that's available to it. No project has ever come in under time. They're always delivered right on the day, at best, and generally late. But that's why you use compressed timelines so that as much gets done in that time as can possibly be done. Now, the dirty little secret is that management should understand that everything will be late, but still have the compressed timeline. There are some immovable timelines. Product launches in 2 months. That one can't be got around. People might have some all-nighters, but that's part of the gig with the job, so long as the job is clearly explained. But it is important to have small, condensed, rushed timelines with clear objectives. Not, we're going to build this and figure it out in the next 2 weeks. It's like, no, we need the permits in the next 2 weeks. Go. We need a button that does this in the next 3 days. Go. Clear expectation, clear goal, clear timeline. That way people have a target to hit and they can adjust their life around that. Well, he just said he wanted the button. We don't have to do the whole back end for it or whatever it was. That's fine. Yeah, the objectives were there. If the deliverable is correct, as in the button was delivered, but some feature is missing, that missing the timeline is feedback on the objectives. The project was not appropriately scoped. Okay, cool. Let's fix that on the next project. Or the timeline is unachievable. Give me a fusion reactor tomorrow. No, can't do it. Okay, well, I must have had unreasonable expectations. Let's relearn from that and readjust the timelines going forward. The wrong way to look at missing a timeline. A timeline is a measurement. It's a yardstick. It is a goal to be hit. If it is missed, you should use that as a data point for feedback around your processes. How did we plan the project? How did we set the timeline? Were we clear in objectives? Because whenever a project fails, it is an organizational failure. The company didn't plan right. There wasn't the right person in the seat. The project wasn't set up right. You don't know what the expectations were. Missed timelines are an indication of all of that. Something in the process broke down. If you have no timelines, you have no feedback loop on if something in the process is breaking down. So rot grows and your timelines just continue to expand and you never have it around. So this is why it's so important to set due dates for things, because if there is no due date, it'll never be done. And if there's no due date, you don't know if you did it on time. You just futz through it all. So you use timelines as a feedback loop for your organization in order to understand that it's operating efficiently. Now, if everyone is persistently hitting their timeline, 5 days for every single project, and every one of them is done on time, then this is an indication, which a lot of people are not going to like this thing, but if every time it's hit and you never miss a timeline and you never fail, then you're not being aggressive enough. That's a very simple indication there. There's somebody else going to eat your lunch competitively because you are not going as fast as you could. So if timelines are always persistently hit, you need to squeeze them, because that forces a box around stuff to where you learn where the weaknesses are. So condensing timelines more and more and more and more lets you get more focused, more intentional, and understand where the weak links are. But our timeline is always hittable. Yes, pretty much. The way we do it at Slant 3D. Everybody who works here will always have a timeline on some project. We've got 2 hours to work on this. We've got 5 days to do that project. We've got 3 weeks to develop this product. We're going to film this video in 30 minutes. Whatever it was. Those are very persistent throughout because they're a form of measurement. It's very intimidating for people to come into an environment like that because most organizations don't have that stringency. And many people get worried about it because if they miss the timeline, like it took me 33 minutes. Oh no, my life's going to end. No. That's fine because we're learning. Okay, we budgeted a half hour for this and it ended up taking an hour and a half. What was wrong there? Oh, the camera was in the other room and we didn't know where this was and so on and so forth. Oh, so we had an organizational problem. Okay, let's get a shelf built out with a label for each one of the parts so that we are able to go grab a camera and film in 30 minutes whenever we need to. The timelines are not there to catch people and say like, you're screwing up, you need to go faster. That's not what it is. It's to have a measurement to say there is a problem because holding up a camera and having the video is 10 minutes. Why did it take 4 hours to film 10 minutes of video? Did we really need that many takes? Or was there other stuff around that was slowing it down from prepping and that kind of thing? So the timeline allows you to find out, is reality and expectation matching up, or is there a wild disjointedness there that needs to be addressed? Because if it needs to be addressed, then let's address it. And that way you can fix it. Same thing goes with like daily budgeting. Like a lot of people are very bad at budgeting out their day. And they're like, yeah, I've got so much stuff to do. I'm like, great, what you do? I can't tell you. Okay, well, on your to-do list, each one of those things has an hour attached to it. and we've got an 8-hour day built out. Why isn't that all able to get done in a day? Stuff comes up. And I'm like, great. What is the stuff? Somebody came and asked me to fix this thing. I'm like, perfect. Okay. So we need to draw down boundaries so that distractions and people send you a note rather than breaking your flow by saying, hey, I come need help with me unloading a truck or something. It's a measurement. It's a yardstick. It's an indicator to know that something's going wrong. Otherwise, these chintzy little things of like, somebody bothered me, this came up, whatever else it was, eat away at you to where you have no effectiveness at all in any project on any given day for any individual. So that's why timelines are so important, because they give you feedback around how well you plan. And if your plan does not match up with reality, what is the problem? That's why they're so useful. Personally, though, timelines are also just really good goal setting so that people do have pressure and know what they're hitting. It's a way of setting expectations, because a project with no timeline is a project that will never be completed. And a project without aggressive timeline will always be done on time. I don't know. I think I've talked about this before, but like undersell, over deliver. I hate that. I hate that so much. Why don't you know? There was a person who asked, I used to talk to who used to work here, who we'd be running through a project and I'd say, how long is it going to take to do this? And he's like, I think it'll take about 2 days, but I want to under promise and over deliver. So I'm going to say a day and a half. And I'm like, bullshit. That's not how long it takes. We are not a company that does, add on 30% just in case. No, you recognize that something will go wrong, but based on existing knowledge, you make a prediction based on existing knowledge and don't throw in mulligan time, because that's wasted and unattributed. I, as a manager, will understand that things will go wrong. And yes, there might be overflow, but I don't want each person in the chain thinking that. Use the knowledge that you have to make an accurate and precise estimation of what you have so that the entire rest of the system can decide to adjust around you or not. Oh, Fred's always 30% late, whatever it was, that kind of thing. But never, the under-promise, over-deliver thing is the greatest breeder of inefficiency on the planet, because it just sets up an expectation of we're allowed to add on this extra time and not actually understand where the delays come in. No, the timeline and whether you hit it should be an indication of how good the systems and how well you understand what you do is. Now, innovative timelines. If you're doing R&D, I cannot say invent fusion in the next 6 months. That won't happen. That's science, that's exploration, it's a creative endeavor. You can't put timelines on that. Equally, if you persistently have timelines where people are having to stay up nights in order to hit the timeline and that kind of thing, that means your timeline is too aggressive, because you're overtaxing the system. It survived a couple times and people's okay, but you're going to have people burn out. So you cannot persistently have timelines that are too aggressive. So you got to find the middle ground where you're not hitting it every time, but you're also not making your team miserable all the time. And you find the in-between to where you're trying to get to greater truth all the time. Does your timeline, do your predictions of time get closer to the actual result at the end of it all? But ultimately, the timeline is a promise. When I'm talking to one of the team and I'm like, how long is this going to take? And they say 2 days. And I'm like, okay, we're going to get this done in 2 days, because I'm going to tell the world that it's going to be done in 3 days. And I got to pay your salary here at the end of the week. So if it's not done in 2 days, we won't have that cash flow. So I can't pay salaries, and so on and so forth. There's knock-on effects to this. So the timeline has to be hit. If that person is overly aggressive and they're like, it took 2 days, but then they had to put 5 days of effort in those 4 days of effort into those 2 days, working nights. But then they had to put 4 days into effort in there. That is their responsibility, because that was their timeline. They need to take that as a lesson and say, oh, in this situation, I need to estimate 4 days because I forgot about the testing and the onboarding and this thing. That's your opportunity to learn. I, as a manager, am not going to be pissed at you. You delivered the thing in 2 days. Maybe it took 3 days and a little bit extra or something, and I adjusted for it because I knew it was something was going to go wrong. But you still have the expectation to hit that timeline. And when it broke you, you adjust and learn going forward. That's how an employee can use them there. Obviously, this all becomes very dysfunctional in bad organizations with bad managers. The managers take no responsibility for planning the timeline. They throw out a thing as if that's the expectation without any feedback from the team and say, we're going to build this in 2 weeks. You guys figure out how to get that done. That's a little bit unreasonable, I think, especially in a startup. They're right there. Ask them. Have the discussion back and forth. How long do you think this is going to take? I think it's going to take 3 weeks. Guys, we only have a week to get this done. How can we get it done in a week? It's like, you're not going to get all your features if you want it done in a week. How about we boil this down and change this up and move this over, and then we can probably condense this down and do that. And you work on the problem so that you get to a greater overall benefit. Your people stay happy and in a sustainable way, and management is happy within that as well. But yes, in lots of corporate bureaucracies, some idiot manager will say 2 weeks or you're fired. And that's stupid. That's a stupid way of doing it because it has no context around what is required to get it made. And there's no feedback loop on that because it was an arbitrary timeline to start with. But yeah, in order to do a timeline well, set clear goals of what you want delivered. Work backward for that with all the knowledge that you have to estimate how much time it will take. Humans are really bad at this. Humans are terribly bad at estimating time, but they get better when it's messed up a couple of times. If you're hitting timelines persistently on time, then you need to be more aggressive or your organization has waste inside of it. If you're persistently having your team work nights, your timelines are unreasonable and, again, unuseful because nobody's learning anything. They're just like, we're work nights every week. That's fine. That's part of startup culture, but that's not a sustainable business practice. And then you use hitting the timeline or not as a metric of how good your planning processes are. That's how you deal with timelines. But also, there are cases, like I said, like payroll, where the timeline is set and it doesn't get to move. So there are different expectations for different people. I, as like the founder and the CEO of the company, it is my job to make sure people's salaries paid on the same day every month without fudging it. Everybody who works for me technically can fudge their timelines and say, oh, shucks, something happened. I was sick that day. Their job is different from mine. But anyhow, timelines should be aggressive, should be growing quickly, and you should use them as a metric of success and operations inside of your company. If they're arbitrary, they're stupid. And if they are not intentionally planned and you're throwing 30% on there or something, that's all stupid. Those are dumb practices that are way too persistent to create useful organizations. But yeah, that's my spiel on timelines. For everybody who's watching, this is kind of for podcast, but I'm probably this conversation is also something that I want to share with the team. So that's part of the reason we're doing with this too, because I want my team to understand that having to address missing a timeline or a time goal is not a wild offense to be stressed about. It's something to learn from. It's like, oh, you couldn't lift 200 pounds when you're benching. Okay, what are the exercises we need to do so that you can? How do we accurately predict how much you can lift? Well, we're going to ease up to there and that kind of stuff. And the timelines are a way of measuring that. And then you go into the process of figuring out how to do it accurately and reasonably, or find out where the waste is that is stopping a person from being accurate and efficient. So, anywho, hopefully that's helpful to everybody, and have a great day, everybody.